Welcome to Tips with Trev, the show where I give developing baseball players some easy tips to end their slumps faster and become a superstar sooner. You've probably all heard it. It's a big thing on the internet. It's quite the craze. The back-heel connection. Is it good, bad, indifferent? What does it mean? I don't know. Let's talk. Welcome back to Tips with Trev, the show where I give developing baseball players some easy tips to end their slumps faster and become a superstar sooner. You've probably heard the term back-heel connection. Is it a good thing, bad thing? What are my thoughts on it? We're going to dive right in. I'm going to start this episode off with a bang, and I'm going to come right out and say the back-heel connection is a bad cue. Borderline a terrible cue. So now that I got that out of the way, and I've made more than half of Twitter pitching Twitter angry, let's talk about why. For one, you got to start with what you're actually trying to accomplish, all right? And this is going to get into a little bit of mechanical theory and whatever else. But you're here for this video, so you probably have interest in that. So what are you trying to accomplish with the back-heel connection? Are you trying to get better direction to the plate? Are you trying to get better drive off the rubber? Are you trying to get more, what are we trying to get with that? That part of the body is so far away from what actually matters. That there's no point in focusing on it, in my opinion. You can say that, oh, you want the back heel to stay down because all the hard throwers have the back heel stay down, and Carlos Carrasco and Danny Salazar were both my teammates, and I watched them pitch a lot, and neither of them had back heel connection. They both were up on their toe very early, and both of them threw 100, and both of them are all-star caliber pitchers. So the truth of the matter is, mechanics are hard because they're so individualized. The concept, the theory behind mechanics is very easy. It's very easily understood. How you train it and how you adopt that theory to fit each individual person you work with is hard. It's a hard problem. There's not enough information out there to know what the best cue is, to tell the person what the best model for their mechanics is. We can only do as much as we can with the data that we have. We can only look at the data so much, make the best guesses that we can, and then work with the athlete and iterate that process until he sees the results that he's looking for. The back-heel connection seems to be tossed around by everyone on the internet like it's the next best thing. It's the best thing since sliced bread. If you just back-heel connect, then it solves all your problems, and that's just simply not true. It is so far from the truth. Let's talk about the three things that really matter in the delivery. All right, I have mechanical breakdown videos where I've talked about the lower half, I've talked about the upper half, I've talked about shoulder-hip separation. There's a lot of different information that can be useful on those specific things. But really, when it comes down to it, the lead leg block, the shoulder-hip separation spring, and the shoulder internal rotation, the abduction, external rotation, internal rotation, spring, are the three things that really matter. I mean, that's really it. So when you start with what you're trying to accomplish, start with one of those three things. I mean, if you're trying to throw harder, like it's probably you're not blocking well on the lead leg, your shoulder-hip separation is mistimed, or the spring isn't tight enough, or your internal rotation spring, your shoulder spring is mistimed, or it's not stiff enough, or whatever. Like, I mean, that's the throw. That's how the throw works. So now you talk about how you get into that. Well, the function of the back leg is really simple. The back leg is supposed to function to position the back hip and the hip socket as a whole, because as you're going down the mound, you're only on one leg. Your front leg is in the air. So the back hip is meant the back leg is meant to position the whole hip socket in a position so that when your front foot strikes the ground, the hips can finish rotating. That's it. Now, how you do that? Well, you can sink into the back leg, you move a little bit forward, and I talk about this in my lower half mechanics video. You lift your legs, so you drift. That's the first thing: drift, drop, rotate, block. Those are the 4 things on the lower half that you talk about, all right? So you drift, and when you drop, you're allowing yourself to sink into the back leg. This allows you to create more force towards the plate using gravity and the force vector of your back leg, your center of mass moving away from the rubber, so the direction of force goes. It's physics, don't worry about it. Use gravity, you drift, and then when you drop into the back leg, you're using gravity to propel you towards the plate. You're not driving off of the back leg as much as you are rotating the hip socket. Because the more energy you build up into foot plant, and the better you position the hips, the more energy you're going to get transferred from the lower half to the upper half. The more violently your hips are going to close off, the better your block is going to be. Like the more you're going to be able to stretch the shoulder hip separation spring. All right, so the back heel connection, if you're a person who, when they drop into their back leg, they take their back foot and they evert it, or they roll up on the side of it. This is what I do. My foot is flat, and then as I drop my body and I move towards the plate, my foot rolls to the side, so it's on the side of the shoe, and then I come up on the toe, and then it rotates through. All right, if you're one of those people and you want to consider that back heel connection, because my back heel is staying on the ground as it rolls before it comes up on the toe, okay, you can call that back heel connection. But what about the people who, when they drop into their leg, they're very quad dominant, they shift their body towards their chest side a little bit, and they go up on their toe early? Well, it doesn't really matter, because if they position their hips correctly for when their front leg hits, then their hips close and it sets off the whole chain of events. Carlos Carrasco and Danny Salazar both did that. They both threw 100, right? There's plenty of other people in the league that do it too. There's plenty of people that roll their back foot, right? It's just a matter of how your body works, what motion you have in your hips, and how you figure out how to organize yourself, right? The other thing though, that when you talk about back heel connection, the thing that's really dangerous about it, and the thing that I dislike the most about that term, is it implies that you're supposed to plant your foot on the rubber and keep it flat. Your heel connected, it's not supposed to move. And in order to do that, without letting it roll, because that would be the heel would be coming off the ground and now you'd be on the side of the foot, or without going up on the toe or whatever, if you keep it flat, that means your back shin has to stay almost perfectly vertical, which means you can't move towards the plate as much as you could or should. And that means that when you get to the bottom of your sit on the back leg, you're going to now push off the mound to create that linear energy that you could have used gravity for. And now you can't position the back hip in the correct way if you're pushing off the rubber, because in order to push off of the rubber, the first thing you have to do is straighten the back leg. And you cannot position the back hip the correct way if the first thing you're doing is straightening the back leg. What needs to happen is the back knee needs to, you need to sit down into the back leg, so you're gaining flexion on the back leg. And as you're doing that, you need to be moving towards the plate so that your knee has a path to bend and then roll, so that your hips can roll and get into that 35 to 45 degree range for when your front foot hits. If you stick your back foot in a pillar of concrete, which is what back heel connection implies, then you'll never be able to roll the knee. You'll never be able to position the hips. You're going to straighten the back leg early, which is going to cause your back hip to pop up and stop rotating, which is going to limit the amount of shoulder hip separation you can get, which is going to limit the amount of forward shoulder rotation that you can get. It's going to cause, I'm out of breath. It's going to cause poor transfers of energy, so your velocity ceiling in your floor, your velocity is going to go down, and it's going to give you more injury risk on your arm, because now instead of being able to roll the elbow and rotate the shoulders forward and direct the elbow in a dart throwing type fashion, your hips are going to be stuck, you're not going to be able to rotate the torso, and the arm's going to fly out to the side, which exposes the UCL, all right? So for so many reasons that I just covered, I hate the back heel connection term. I hate that it's tossed around as like a cue that everyone should try to do. Mechanics are hard because you have to individualize them to every single athlete you work with, and you can't have one cue that fixes everything. What you can do is educate your athlete about the throw so they understand what they're trying to accomplish, so their body, they can figure out for their body how best to do that. Do they want to be like Carlos Carrasco and go up on the toe early? Do they want to be like Trevor Bauer and roll the foot to the side? Like, there's a lot of different ways to do it, okay? But you got to individualize it, which means you, as coaches, as pitching Twitter people, as dads, as whoever is educating the next group of players, needs to actually do the research on all the different things that are going on when you throw these cues out there and how it can actually impact the throw. So again, on the lower half, and I've covered this in a video before, on the lower half, it's drift, drop, rotate, block. Those are the things that matter on the lower half. On the throw as a whole, it's the lead leg block, it's the shoulder hip separation spring, and it's the shoulder internal rotation, external rotation, abduction, adduction spring, right? So block on the lead leg, shoulders, hips, shoulder. Those are the three things that matter. If you're not attacking one of those things and trying to improve the qualities of one of those things, then you don't got it right. The process isn't right. And throwing out a back heel connection, controlling the furthest thing away from your center of mass, the furthest thing away from the throw, from the final part of the throw, if you're thinking about that, you're in a narrow internal mindset, thinking about something that doesn't even matter. I mean, the back foot has absolutely no weight on it as soon as the front foot hits. The front foot hits, the back foot becomes completely irrelevant. And so now you're worrying about a cue on the back foot when the front leg is important and then the arm is important. So like if this is the end of the delivery and the back foot is completely weightless when you actually finish the throw, why are we thinking about a cue for the back foot? And it's going to fix everything. What it's actually doing is putting you in a narrow internal mindset and making it harder for you to position your hips correctly, which makes it harder to block, which makes it harder to get shoulder hip separation, which makes it harder to load the spring of the shoulder, which makes it easier to get injured. So that's my mini rant on the back heel connection and why I think it's a terrible term. One caveat to that is if it's a cue that works for a specific athlete that you're working with to get him to move in the direction that you want him to move, to position the hips better, if he can think that and that causes a movement that is in line with the principles that I'm talking about here, then it's a good cue. But it is not a good cue to teach a wide variety of people and to spout about this is the key to velocity or whatever the case is. So that's my rant. Share this video with everybody on pitching Twitter who uses the back heel connection because I would love to hear their response to it. Leave me a comment below, all you pitching Twitter people who are inevitably going to find your way to this video. If you would like to leave reasons why I'm an idiot or you think back heel connection is important, I would love to hear your reasons and see what kind of argument you have against this. And we can carry all that out in the comments so everybody who's watching this video in the future can read both sides of what we're talking about here. So that's an open invitation to leave me a comment, give me a thumbs up or thumbs down, and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of these future videos. I'm trying to get to 100,000 by the end of 2020, so help me out along my way. I would appreciate that, and I will see you guys in the next video.